Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Azeri President Ilham Aliyev says his country will hold talks with Armenia only after the ongoing conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh is over. In an interview, Aliyev said Turkey has the right to participate in any future mediation. Over 300 people have been killed in the clashes so far. Indian troops have martyred 3 more Kashmiris in occupied Kashmir's Shopian district. The youths were targeted during a cordon and search operation in the Sugan area of the district. The occupied valley has been under India's crushing curfew and communications blackout for the last 429 days. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has condemned the recent Houthi attacks on Saudi Arabia. He was speaking to his Saudi counterpart Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud over the phone. The Foreign Minister said Islamabad is committed to defending the territorial integrity of Saudi Arabia. He said Islamabad and Riyadh share historic ties and they always stand by each other in difficult times. India has recorded 986 COVID-19 deaths and over 72,000 infections overnight, taking the caseload to over 6.7 million. In Pakistan, 12 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 overnight, taking the death toll to 6,535. Globally, the COVID-19 has claimed over 1,047,000 lives and infected more than 35.6 million people. A US and a French scientist have won the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for developing a genome editing method. The Nobel Committee said Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna discovered one of the gene technology's sharpest tools. The committee has also awarded about $1 million prize to the winners. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Azeri President Ilham Aliyev says his country will hold talks with Armenia only after the ongoing conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh is over. In an interview, Aliyev said that Turkey has the right to participate in any future mediation, but Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan is reluctant to consider the offer. There are fears that the military conflict can turn into a regional war. Over 300 people have been killed in almost 2 weeks of fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Despite repeated calls for ceasefire, the conflict rages on. Indian troops have murdered 3 more Kashmiris in occupied Kashmir's Shopian district. The youths were targeted during a military operation in the Sugan area of the district. The occupation troops have continued their cordon and search operations in several other areas of the territory. Yesterday, guards of a worker of the ruling BJP murdered a Kashmiri youth in indiscriminate fighting in Ganderbal. The occupied valley has been under India's curfew and communications blackout for the last 429 days. Pakistan's envoy to the UN, Munir Akram, says the Indian government is spreading Islamophobia as a state policy. Akram made these remarks while addressing the 6th Committee of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. He said India cannot suppress Kashmiri's struggle for freedom on the pretext of terrorism. Akram said terrorism cannot be linked with any religion under UN resolutions. The envoy said Indian forces are perpetrating gross human rights violations in the occupied valley. He added, New Delhi is responsible for the killing of innocent Kashmiris in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has condemned the recent Houthi attacks on Saudi Arabia. He was speaking to his Saudi counterpart Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud over the phone. The foreign minister said Islamabad is committed to defending the territorial integrity of Saudi Arabia. He said Islamabad and Riyadh share historic ties and the two countries always stand by each other in difficult times. Earlier, the foreign minister held a phone call with his Turkish counterpart Mevlut Çavuşoğlu. Qureshi thanked Turkey for its unwavering stance on occupied Jammu and Kashmir. At least 3 civilians have been killed when the vehicle hit a roadside mine in the northeastern Kapisa province. Police said the incident took place in the Tagab district while accusing the Taliban of planting the mine. No group has yet claimed the responsibility for the blast. Earlier, 2 suicide bombers attacked Afghanistan National Army camp in the Helmand province. The Defense Ministry said 3 soldiers were wounded in the attack. Russia and China have expressed concerns over political unrest in Kyrgyzstan and hoped for a swift return to stability. In an interview, Russian President Vladimir Putin said Moscow hopes everything will be settled peacefully. Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry said Beijing expects all the parties involved can resolve their issues through dialogue. Kyrgyzstan faces chaos as rival opposition factions made grabs for power a day after they forced the prime minister to resign, while President Sooronbay Jeenbekov has called for all-party talks. In Libya, the rival factions have reached an agreement over the selection criteria for key sovereign positions. The delegations of the Libyan Supreme Council of the State and the Tobruk-based House of Representatives signed the deal. The signing ceremony took place in Morocco following the second round of talks. The recent deal is related to the earlier 2015 Shirat Agreement. It dictates the approval of the 2/3 of the House of Representatives for the leadership appointments. Previously, most of these sovereign institutions were divided with 2 chiefs. After a trial lasting more than 5 years, the leadership of Greece's neo-Nazi party have been convicted of running a criminal organization. The Golden Dawn Party secured 18 MPs in 2012 as Greeks were battered by a financial crisis. Thousands gathered outside the court in Athens and cheered on as the judges gave verdicts on 68 defendants. The criminal inquiry into the party began with the murder of an anti-fascist musician in 2013. Leader Nikos Mikaloliakos and 6 colleagues were convicted of heading a criminal group. Supporter Georgios Roupkias was found guilty of murdering the musician, and 15 others were convicted of conspiracy in the case. It is the first time that elected politicians have been detained in Greece since a military coup in 1967. Beijing has slammed U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's accusations against China during his visit to Japan. Earlier, Pompeo strongly criticized Beijing over the East and South China Seas, cybersecurity, and China-India conflict. A spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Japan said Washington needs to abandon its Cold War mentality. Calling the allegations lies, the spokesperson accused Pompeo of maliciously creating political confrontation. He said China has always advocated multilateral cooperation, openness, tolerance, and transparency. The U.S. says it is troubled over a recent spike in attacks and explosions in northwestern Syria. The remarks came after the death toll from a blast in Al-Bab rose to 21. In a statement, a State Department spokeswoman, Morgan Ortagus, said Washington condemns the terrorist attack. The local administration said that as many as 118 people were wounded in the explosion near a bus station. Locals say the blast occurred when a bomb-laden vehicle blew up in a crowded area in the town. No one has claimed the responsibility for the bombing. In Bangladesh, 4 Rohingya Muslims have been killed and dozens injured in a feud between 2 factions in Cox's Bazar refugee camp. The Office of Refugee Relief and Repatriation Commissioner said 7 Rohingya have been killed and hundreds have been displaced in 3 days of clashes. It said before the deadly clashes, law enforcement arrested 9 Rohingya on different criminal charges. It added the army, anti-terrorism units and police are trying to bring the situation under control. A camp in charge said due to the fears of clashes, 500 Rohingya families have been transferred to other camps. The official added the families can return once the situation becomes normal. Kuwait's new Amir, Sheikh Nawaf Al Ahmed Al Sabah, has named Sheikh Mishal Al Ahmed Al Jaber as the new crown prince. State media said Sheikh Mishal is the deputy chief of Kuwait's National Guard and brother of the late Amir who died last week. Kuwait's national parliament must approve the Amir's choice of crown prince before its term ends tomorrow. Last week, the Amir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah died in the US, where he had been undergoing treatment since July. The Gulf state is observing a 40-day period of national mourning. India has recorded 986 COVID-19 deaths and over 72,000 infections overnight, taking the caseload to over 6.7 million. Globally, the virus has claimed over 1,047,000 lives and infected more than 35.6 million people. More in this report.
With the second wave of the virus stalling hopes of any economic revival, the IMF has once again warned of an absolute crash of the global economy. In Latin America, Brazil registers the highest daily new cases in almost a month, while Argentina has reported the world's highest rate of positive cases. In the United States, the virus is spreading further among President Donald Trump contacts, as over a dozen of his top aides contract the virus. Over in Asia, COVID-19 continues to overwhelm already devastated India. Wastelands in India are being cleared to add space for graves in the capital's oldest cemetery.
The land that was allotted to us in this graveyard, all of that land has been filled up. After a meeting with the authorities yesterday, we were allocated some more land. So this machine is here to clean up that patch of land and create some fresh space.
Over in Europe, Spain has become the first Western European nation to surpass 800,000 total coronavirus cases, as Finland registered the highest number of infections in the last 24 hours. Holland has recorded the highest number of deaths. The World Health Organization says pandemic fatigue is raising levels of apathy.
We think that this is a forgotten aspect of COVID in a sense that part of the challenges that we face is that this is an underfunded area historically. So when something like the current pandemic happens, we see the impacts maybe heavier in this area because of the past situation.
Meanwhile, Russia's daily tally of cases rose to its highest since May. The Kremlin has imposed fresh restrictions in the capital city of Moscow.
Iran has confirmed 239 coronavirus-related fatalities in the last 24 hours, taking the nationwide death toll past 27,600. In a news briefing, Health Ministry spokesperson Seema Sadat said Iran registered a record high 4,019 new infections. The total number of identified cases in the worst-hit country in the Middle East has risen to over 483,000. Sadat said out of total infected patients, nearly 400,000 have been recovered or discharged from the hospitals. Iran is now in the grip of a third major wave of COVID-19 infections. Most of its 32 provinces are classified as red, with the capital experiencing the worst outbreak. In Pakistan, 12 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 overnight, raising the toll to 6,535. The Health Ministry says 624 people tested positive in the last 24 hours. The ministry said there are 8,528 total active cases in the country. It said out of over 316,000 cases, more than 301,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said over 138,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while over 100,000 have been reported in Punjab so far. The National Command and Operations Center says 79 people across the country are on ventilators. Indian doctors have staged a demonstration in capital New Delhi against unpaid salaries for the last 4 months. Holding placards, doctors and paramedics of government-run Hindu Rao Hospital raised slogans for clearance of their salaries. A nurse said the healthcare providers cannot work in starvation and complained of the bad conditions amid the pandemic. India reported over 72,000 new cases of coronavirus overnight. The country leads the world in the average number of new infections and will overtake the US over the next few weeks. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. 2 scientists have been awarded the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for developing the tools to edit DNA. Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna are the first 2 women to share the prize, which honors their work on the technology of genome editing. Their discovery is a way of making specific and precise changes to the DNA contained in living cells. They will split the prize money of over $1 million. US President Donald Trump says he has ordered declassification of all documents related to Russia and Hillary Clinton. The order covers the documents related to federal investigations in Russian election interference. They also include former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's use of a private server for official emails. President Trump said Americans have acted very slowly, while it is perhaps the biggest political crime in the US history. Last year, Trump gave Attorney General William Barr authority to declassify any documents related to surveillance of his campaign in 2016. Facebook and Twitter have taken down posts from US President Donald Trump for violating their rules. In a tweet, Trump suggested COVID-19 was just like the flu. Facebook took the post down, but not before it was shared about 26,000 times. A spokesperson for the Facebook said they removed incorrect information about the severity of COVID-19. Twitter also disabled retweets on a similar post from Trump. It added a warning label that said the tweet broke its rules. Earlier, Trump told Americans not to fear COVID-19 as he returned to the White House after a 3-night stay in the hospital. Russia says it is not developing any chemical weapons and is complying with its obligations under an international arms control treaty. In a statement, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Russia has yet to receive any information from the OPCW on Alexei Navalny's case. Earlier, the global chemicals watchdog confirmed that the Kremlin critic was poisoned with a nerve agent from the banned Novichok family. Meanwhile, Germany said it will discuss with partners what action to take against Navalny's poisoning. Navalny had also said that Russian agencies poisoned him as a threat ahead of next year's parliamentary elections. Argentines protest in Buenos Aires against the International Monetary Fund to instigate talks for a new financing agreement. A $57 billion financing deal with Buenos Aires is up for negotiation. The protesters played drums outside the central bank building. People held placards reading IMF out. A mission from the IMF has arrived in the country to meet with officials from the Economy Ministry and the central bank. A few weeks ago, Argentina completed a process of restructuring its debt to private creditors for $100 billion. Argentina is headed for an economic contraction of about 12% this year. The country remains stricken with economic recession for the 3rd year in a row. Hurricane Delta has rapidly lost strength and landed into Category 2 before reaching the Mexican resort town of Cancun. Delta brought winds of 110 miles per hour by the time it hit the coast close to Puerto Morelos village. Earlier, Cancun scrambled to shut down shops and evacuated tourists from the beach hotels. Despite losing strength, the storm's arrival is a blow to Mexican efforts to revive tourism in the country battered by the pandemic. Delta is also disrupting the oil industry, with companies shutting down offshore production platforms. A desert sculpture museum in northwest China has become a travel hotspot during the National Day holiday. The museum is located in Suwu Desert Scenic Area in Gansu province. More in this report.
China is on the move again as hundreds of millions of people are enjoying their National Day holiday. The country's first desert sculpture museum is attracting thousands of tourists. The museum covers an area of about 70 hectares with a total investment of about 120 million yuan. At present, the museum is home to 102 sculptures featuring modern and contemporary elements. Standing in the vast desert, the sculptures show a strong artistic appeal and visual impact. Tourists from across China have thronged to see the Desert Museum. Minchin County had held several international desert sculpture creation camps and invited domestic and foreign artists to create sculptures.
Finding a suitable work to earn a square meal in war-torn Syria is an uphill task, even for men, let alone women. But one woman has broken the barriers of the glass ceiling. Let's have a glimpse of her struggle in this report.
Both men and women gaze at taxi driver Kinana Al-Bunni. When they get into the car, she has been driving through Damascus streets since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. After graduating from a commercial institute, she realized that working indoors did not suit her and decided to work as a taxi driver instead. She first started this career 10 years ago by giving free lifts to friends on their way to the Lebanese capital. When the border closed to curb the spread of the coronavirus pandemic, she started working for a private taxi company in Damascus, a profession usually opted by men.
There is a belief here in this country that women do not know how to drive. So I try to change this idea and show that a woman can drive and sometimes drive better than a man.
The 37-year-old single mother does not only want to provide an income for her 2 children, but also to change attitudes regarding female drivers. When she first sat behind the wheel, her family opposed the idea, saying that society would be against it. But the real support came from her friends.
They opposed the idea a bit. It surprised them. It can't be. How is that possible? In our family, nobody is like this. Our society refuses this. A female driver? Fine, you took a driving course, but to give rights to men, to women, it is not nice. I told them no. This is what I chose and this is my future. Of course, I am looking for more than this.
Kinana Al-Bunni has proved that strong conviction coupled with hard work cannot stop anyone from pursuing their goals. Now she dreams of owning her own car or taxi company.
Eddie Van Halen, one of the rock music's greatest guitar players, has died of cancer at the age of 65. The US musician's death was announced on Twitter by his son. Eddie and his brother Alex formed the band Van Halen in 1970s with singer David Lee Roth and bassist Michael Anthony. The band released its eponymous debut album in 1978, shooting to number 19 on the Billboard charts. Halen and his brother remained constant, appearing on 12 studio albums, selling tens of millions of copies. Van Halen became one of the biggest rock acts with hit songs. Eddie Van Halen's pioneering virtuoso technique made him one of rock's top guitarists. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Poland's anti-monopoly watchdog says it has imposed a fine of $7.6 billion on Russia's Gazprom. The Competition and Consumer Protection says Gazprom did not get its approval for building the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. Watchdog's president Tomasz Krosny says they have imposed penalties on 6 companies. He says the evidence leaves no doubt the entrepreneurs have deliberately violated the law. Krosny says it is not a fight with any entrepreneur. He says the fight is for respect for competition law and consequently for consumer rights. Nord Stream 2 is led by Gazprom. The US has also imposed sanctions on companies laying pipes for the project. US aircraft maker Boeing has slashed its expectations for global passenger jet demand over the next decade by 11%. This shows an estimated $200 billion lost to the industry in revenue as the airlines shrink fleets. Boeing has cut the demand forecast for the first time since 2009 crisis. Boeing's Vice President Darren Hulse said the pandemic has dramatically impacted the industry. He said it will take minimum of 5 years for the industry to recover. Hulse said the cut takes the value of 10-year demand from $3.1 trillion to $2.9 trillion for over 18,000 jets. Meanwhile, Boeing expected nearly 60% of deliveries in the first decade will be for replacements. US stocks have seen a rise after President Donald Trump tweeted support for aid to airlines and other stimulus measures. The tweet stoked hope that a smaller aid package could be passed by lawmakers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average traded 1.5% higher, while the S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite are trading higher by over 1%. Meanwhile, oil prices fell after Trump dashed hopes for a fourth stimulus package to boost the virus-hit economy. A larger than expected buildup in the US crude stocks also contributed to price decline. European stocks are trading mixed. Investors digest a robust round of earnings and President Trump's decision to halt talks about a second coronavirus stimulus deal. The pan-European stock 600 hovered just above the flat line. Britain's biggest supermarket chain, Tesco, gained over 2% as it reported a jump in sales. Frankfurt's DAX shed 0.25%. Paris's CAC 40 dropped marginally. Italy's FTSE also dipped close to 0.25%. Earlier Asian markets also traded mixed. Australia, Hong Kong and South Korea markets gained while Japan's dropped. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. With the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.